A very good morning to you. It is a wonderful, wonderful Friday. And I know Friday is one of those days that you just want to wake up and see the evening come because we are always looking forward to the weekend. But right here at Morning Prime, we make sure that to make that day exquisite for you and to make sure that you are being informed on the latest in regards to matters news and how it impacts you. So welcome to Morning Prime. My name is Noah Kipkemboy. New faces sometimes do appear. It is the December season. You never know. Now, we're going to be going through the dailies, and it's quite a bunch, to be honest. There's a lot, I don't know, for Friday, but I will systematically dissect some of these stories and see where it stands. Today being a Friday, we'll be focusing on matters, leadership and governance, and how all these issues marry into the subject matter. So it's time that you fasten your seatbelt, and we are about to begin. But before we do so, I'm always inspired every morning, and it's very critical. I'm trying to find that application that gives me inspiration. And this morning, I was looking for wisdom. Not only wisdom, but Solomonic wisdom. Later on, you'll understand why I'm saying that. And I was going through this wonderful book, and it's the book of Proverbs, chapter 23. Now, quite a number of nuggets there that have been given, but one that stood out for me, verse 12. Proverbs 23:12, apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. My son, 15, if your heart is wise, my heart will rejoice indeed myself. Yes, my inmost being will rejoice when my lips speak right things. When your lips speak right things. Do not let your heart envy sinners, be zealous, and fear the Lord in all your days. Just get wisdom right there. But I'll let you to self-interpret that. It's a beautiful morning to be here. Not wasting much time, I'd like us to start with the dailies. And today I have a huge panel, which I'm going to be introducing later on. Some of them are not here, so if you're watching and you're on the way, please, let's learn to keep time. But in the meantime, let's start with the Standard newspaper. Top story. Hard questions as CS defends KCPE results. Education Cabinet Secretary was before Parliament to explain what could have gone wrong with the marking or results transmission. He said all was well and that what learners got are the true reflection. However, he failed to answer some questions. And there we have the big question mark in red. If you can just look at this particular big question mark. My zooming powers are zooming right there. But you're being asked who printed the exam. That's the first question and the first query that has been coming out. According to Mashogu, no contract was breached, but NEC says they procured high security printing machines for the exam. Remember, we've been printing our exams outside this country. And that's the first question. Why haven't you been printing locally? Maybe there's a better explanation to that. And secondly, this issue of who got the tender to print this exam has been brought to question, of course, by opposition leader Raila Odinga. Anyway, matters printing exam was the first query. A big red question mark. Second, were anomalies because of marking errors or transmission problem? Now we are weighing what is the bigger animal to fry here. Now, minister says slightly more than 1,000 complaints were as a result of an SMS glitch. But how did students get marks for papers they didn't sit? Now, you never know. They say sometimes things happen by fate. These students did actually sit for these papers. But that's another thing. What exactly happened? Big question right there. If the results if results used to place learners are provisional, will Form 1 intake be affected when final results are declared? Is it confusion galore or is it a misunderstanding? That is the top story on the Standard. Also, still on the big paper, if I might just go back, we have a big story right there. It's been highlighted on page 2. Ruto pushes MPs to make housing levy legal. And this after the back and forth with the court. That story has been highlighted on page 2. We'll be dissecting it further in that regard. Also, big fight that made UDA call off polls. Now, they're supposed to have polls this month, and meant to understand. They pushed it forward to next year. And the question is, why are we doing so? Also highlighted there on the top of the Standard, Tshisekedi's bumpy ride, DRC elections. Seeing there matters to do with East Africa. Remember, they're the member of ESC and one of the biggest, most resource nations across the world. DRC elections coming up. And also on matters sports, it's been highlighted Kenya takes on Uganda in grudge match. Now, I don't know why we termed it as grudge match because Ugandans are our very good neighbors right there. Anyway, let me check the next stage, but even still on the top story, I can see quite something interesting here, and it touches on the much hyped Africa climate calls a non-issue at COP28. So we made the Nairobi Declaration. You remember the Africa Climate Summit? We covered it. Our president drove in an electric, car, a very small electric car. It was like this, the future. And then African heads of state were present. And the question, they made a declaration. They called it the Nairobi Declaration. And quite a number of things came up there, including one that stood out, has to do with taxation and climate mitigation, and also climate financing being at the core of this particular issue. But now we have COP28 and it's entering the second week, and nobody is starting on this issue of the place of Africa in regards to mitigating climate change. So quite a lot there to tackle. That's the top on the Standard. And as you've realized, my zooming in and out is quite very hard, very hard. I really appreciate that. On the next page, we're seeing new bill proposes stiff penalty for failure to remit housing levy. Now, this is very critical because, as you can see there, the housing levy was deemed unconstitutional, and after that they had to make amends, and now there is a new bill that has been forwarded. It's in the first reading. It's been tabled by Mr. Shungwa, and this bill proposes, or rather seeks, to anchor 1.5% housing levy in law and establish legal structures on how the fund will be administered. Then employers will be hit with penalty equal to 3% of the unpaid amount. Now there, it's been broken down very well in red on how this particular levy will be distributed. Now 30% of the monies will be allocated to the National Housing Corporation. Another 30% will be allocated to slum upgrading, maintenance and rehabilitation, and offtake of affordable housing program project. And 36% of the amount will be allocated to State Department responsible for matters relating to affordable housing in respect to institutional housing programs and projects as approved by the cabinet. And 2% of the monies will be allocated to the collector for the collection of the levy. And finally, the last 2% of the amount will be allocated to the board for the administration of the fund, as may be approved by Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury. So there we have page 2. Page 3, we've touched a little bit on matters to do with this back and forth that we had, where we had a bank to pay client 1 million for failed transaction. Remember, this happened in 2010. But before I come to that story, still on top 2, page 2 rather. Governor reads Riot Act to top officials over valueless trips. And this is happening in Nyamira County, where Governor Amos Nyaribo has expressed concerns over unnecessary trips by his senior staff that have continued to strain the county finances. Now, it's very funny because I mean, when you look to all our devolved units, there's always trips involved. And we'll be looking at this later on and analyzing this with our panel, which will be critical in that regard. So that is on page 2. Page 3, what is to do with banks to pay clients for failed transaction. And this happened back in 2010. Quite an interesting story right there by a Stanbic Bank. Actually, there was a client who wanted to pay for a fridge back in 2010 at Timol branch, and she couldn't get her money. And it was embarrassing. She sued the bank. The bank went ahead and deducted almost 40,000 from her account, but they couldn't actually avail the money for that payment. And now it's 13 years later. She's getting compensation, 1 million shillings. Now, with that said, let's move to the next page. Of course, these details in regards to the hard questions surrounding our KCPE. And there we go. I want to zoom in a little bit. This story by Lewis Nyaundi. Printing exams abroad was believed to mitigate potential malpractices. That's why we print our exams abroad. And then Basic Education, Piers Bele Kipsang says that SMS platform will not be used again. We've learned our lesson. Even as we close up, as we wrapped up KCPE, we're saying we finished with the bang. For failure, for a better word, for lack of a better word, we finished with the bang. But all these malpractices, I mean, what does it hold for the next regime when it comes to exam handling? But anyway, that's page 4. Page 5, we see there More Education Center top female KCPE candidate land scholarship. Very important and very encouraging. And even as we go down in top 5, I mean, this will be of interest. We see Kenya Power is saying that it's put a notice there, people should stop vandalism. Is this one of the problems facing this Kenya Power of ours, as we see? And with that said, I'd like us to go to a different set of newspapers. I had let me see whether it's on a different tab. Yes, this one is on a different tab. The Daily Nation. Daily Nation. Here we have Daily Nation top story is KCPE audit. And what is the issue here? We see Mashogu seeks answers for errors. That's the story that has been highlighted by the Daily Nation this morning. And is it a humble pie situation where the government has ordered a forensic audit into the erroneous results received by some candidates through SMS in this year's KCPE examinations? Now appearing before MPs, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Mashogu also dismissed Azimio leader Raila Odinga's claim that tender wars were to blame for the results mess that has even seen candidates and their parents move to court. This is quite unheard of. Now remember, if a forensic audit is being held, the number of candidates stands at 1.4 million. Now, what will that mean? Does it mean we have to go through all the results? And how will that impact the movement or transition of these children? Also a top story. I see there it's gone blue. On sports, the Daily Nation has highlighted the story of Ombachi, rugby, family, and cooking saved me from suicidal thoughts. And what do I have to say about that? It's done. That's how Ombachi does his cooking. If you follow him on social media, he cuts, chops, and he says done. Coriander done. Rabbit done. I don't know whether he's cooked the ostrich egg with soup. But that's the focus on sports and how sports is critical. Even cooking, maybe our hobbies, our way out. Also top story, right there on the Nation. Staff colluded with hospitals to commit fraud, says NHIF boss. Now the National Health Insurance Fund, which is transitioning to social health insurance fund from NHIF to SHIF, the management says, actually they said yesterday, they admitted that some of its employees colluded with private hospitals to defraud the institution of billions of shillings. Hey. You know, we keep saying government, and there you have it. Even in some of these critical institutions, which is meant to cushion Kenyans on matters health, people still find a way to make money. And that is the big drop right there by the NHIF boss, saying that people are making millions. And also, as part of the highlighted story there, One Africa, the Clarion Call as Kusi Festival starts. It's been highlighted there. I feel I can imagine the song that is playing from this particular, from these particular dancers pictured here. It looks South African, like Kosa, but that is a discussion for another day. But that is Kusi Festival has kick-started. But also at the pull-out down there, it is The Voice and the unmasking the rising tide of defilement and incest. That is another issue that has been brought to light by the Daily Nation. Now, I want to proceed and just go to the next page. That is the Kusi. We also have, this one is quite interesting because page 3 rather, I'd like to focus there. Since it's Friday and we are lovers of good music, this gentleman is a legend when it comes to music, but promoters have threatened to scuttle Olomide show over the 2016 debt. This one is things coming out of the closet almost 7 years later, where promoters, that is Jules Nsana and Noha Aumamuga of Nsana Production, are threatening to disrupt the show Coffee Olomide show over 10 shillings. So there we have it. On that is page 3 of the Nation. Of course, the story has been detailed in page 4, matters to do with the examinations ongoing, and I think that is very critical. Now, that's the Daily Nation. We still have matters to do with Business Daily. Our top story on Business Daily. Do I have the e-version of Business Daily? Not yet. I'll figure that out as we go on, but I have the hard copy because hard copy is always key. And top story here is inside Thige's big policy gamble to stop shilling slide. Now I understand what's been going on in the country. The dollar against the shilling has been weakening, or you might as well see it from the other side of the coin, that the dollar has been strengthening against the shilling. Now, the top man at the CBK and who sits at the helm of the monetary policy committee in this country is taking quite some drastic measures to make sure that the shilling is finding its grounding. Now, we saw in his post-monetary policy, post-MPC address saying that the rate hike, the central bank rate hike to 12.5%, a historic one for close to this, the top one for the last 11 years, that these will help stabilize the shilling against the dollar. That's the top story on the Business Daily. Quite interesting. Which other newspaper do I have here? We have The Star. The Star is talking about MPs hand civil servants chance to win tenders. Now, conflict of interest bill among legislation to tame corruption in civil service. Remember what is happening at NHIF? The Star is saying this issue about tenders and civil servants. But apart from that also, we have the Kofi Olomide pictorial right there. Of course, being the musician he is well branded in some of the top brands that our artists, bring. People Daily, the top story on People Daily. Nyakango, my ordeal in custody. There is always a tell to it. I just woke up while I was making my morning prayers. There were Subarus outside. And as young people would say, Subaru ya Mambaru imekam. And that's what happened to the controller of budget. People are wondering, well, if you want the ordeal, it's well outlined on the People Daily. Also, we see state six MPs not to return housing tax, also highlighted on top of the People Daily. And as we finish up, you know how, and the paper is international. It's with the size of it. Now, on the China Daily, this is lengthy, paper. On the China Daily, they are highlighting, Xi highlights strategic importance of EU ties. Now, even while I was highlighting top story, I think it was the Daily Nation, in regards to the focus on, actually it was at the Standard, the issue of climate change. We've always seen sort of this duality between the global south and the north. And even when we talk about the issue of BRICS, it's about the duality that we're seeing in the world. Now, Xi Jinping says that he sees a very important and strategic importance of EU ties. So there's always that back and forth. And 80 years after repeal of Exclusion Act, buy still seen in US. That's another story that has been highlighted by the China Daily. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a good morning. It's Friday. Come on. I want us to go on a short break so that I can grab a cup of coffee, or will I do tea? I prefer tea. When we come back, we'll start with our panelists, and today is heavy because we'll be expecting a lot of wisdom from our panelists. Dr. Ogola is already with us in studio, looking sharp as always. Ready? Dr. Ogola, You've seen the top story. It seems we have a lot of questions. It's like we are going through another round of examination.
Yes.
Yeah. Is this a governance issue and a leadership issue, the way this KCPE has been handled?
It's a leadership issue, it's a process issue, it's a structural issue, it's a systematic issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll be looking forward to some of the mitigations, because we've been told that most of the times ours is just to highlight problems, but we're not offering solutions. So as part of our discussions, we'll be looking at what can be done better. What are some of the interventions? Of course, later on, we'll also have Mr. Asab Cheriot, who is a government relations expert, and Mr. Paul Dailies, who's a governance expert too. So today we have lots of experts in studio. I'm the only person who's not an expert. I think I've been learning a lot. We take a short break. Remember, it's morning prime. It's Friday. And take this break also to grab a cup of tea or coffee, because after that, it's going to be fire. Shall we take the break? All right, let's do that. Thank you.